So you might be thinking, okay, well, it's obvious that the larger cruise ships, that's the better option when it comes to dining. But let me tell you why that could be a disadvantage. And happy Sunday, everyone. I'm Morgan from the very unofficial travel guides. And today on Sunday Sofa Time, we're going to go through the endless debate, big cruise ship versus little cruise ship. This is something that people talk about all the time, and I have been on big cruise ships and I have been on little cruise ships. Or wait, I mean big cruise ships and little cruise ships. Don't worry, I'm not gonna do that through the whole video. I'm annoyed by it already myself. So I thought I would sit down and write out a few points that I think are relevant when you're thinking of booking a cruise and just tell you my thoughts on them. And the categories I wanna talk about are the cabins, the price, the dining, the service, the fun stuff inside, the fun stuff outside, the destinations, and then wrap it all up. And please, if after watching this you think there's something that's really relevant that I forgot to talk about, then write it in the comments below and maybe I'll make a part 2 of this video. Okay? So let's start with the cabin. Of course, you can't go on a cruise unless you book some kind of a cabin. How would that even work? I've done videos comparing the different cabin categories, and the 3 main cabin categories are inside, ocean view, and balcony. And I know, there are a whole bunch of other different categories in between and above that, but I'm just talking about like the 3 main categories. And I have to say, there really isn't much of a relevant difference when it comes to booking a cruise as far as the cabin goes. The only thing I could really think to talk about is that most of the bigger ships are newer, and the newer ships will have sort of more modern designs. The smaller ships tend to be a little bit older. I mean, the trend nowadays is just to build bigger ships, not smaller ships. And so if you're gonna be cruising on a smaller ship, then your cabin design may be older. However, a lot of the older, smaller ships have been getting lots of upgrades and facelifts recently, so that might also not be true. I guess what I'm trying to say is altogether, there really isn't much of a difference to think about when it comes to bigger ship, smaller ship, and as far as the cabins go. So let's move on to the next category, and that is the price. Usually, like I was just saying, the smaller ships are a little bit older, less modern, and offer less activities and things like that, which we're gonna be talking about in the near future. And so usually cruising on a smaller ship tends to fit into a smaller budget. But that basically only applies if we're talking about like the major popular cruise lines like NCL, Royal Caribbean, and let's throw Carnival in there. If you want to add the luxury lines like Seabourn or Azamara, most of their ships are also very small, but it's a whole different price category. Those ships cost a lot because they offer like a luxury yacht experience. But yeah, if we stick to these big popular cruise lines, like I was saying, NCL, Royal Caribbean, Carnival, then usually the smaller ships tend to offer a smaller price, and the larger ships that have more options cost more. I guess that just makes sense, doesn't it? Should we move on? Yes, we should. Dining. All right, you're gonna notice a trend here, and that is the smaller ships usually have less dining options, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, and I'll tell you why in a second. So on the smaller ships, you usually have 1 main dining room, 1 buffet, and then maybe 3, maybe 4 specialty dining options. These are gonna be extra restaurants like sushi restaurants or maybe a dedicated Italian restaurant that are not included in the price of your cruise, and that you're gonna have to probably reserve a table there and pay extra to eat there once you get on board. Some of the bigger mega ships like the Norwegian Bliss or the NCL Oasis or Harmony of the Seas, they have like 3 different main dining rooms, then maybe 2 different buffet options, and then like 15 up to 20 different specialty restaurants. Some of them cost more, some of them don't cost more. So you might be thinking, okay, well, it's obvious that the larger cruise ships, that's the better option when it comes to dining. But let me tell you why that could be a disadvantage, and that is the whole FOMO, fear of missing out. If you're on like the Harmony of the Seas for a 5-night cruise, when your cruise is over, you're gonna gonna leave that ship with the feeling that there is so much that you didn't get to see. Because there's literally no way you can eat at every restaurant and do everything on board in those 5 days. There's just no way. But on a smaller ship, you can. Another thing about the bigger ships is, like I said, there's all these different options for dining, and you know, if you are a very organized person and if you have a little bit of extra money in your budget, then you can technically eat at a different restaurant every night, but that's gonna require you to make all the reservations, and then you're gonna have like a schedule for your whole vacation. And if you ask me, having a fixed schedule and knowing exactly what I'm gonna do at every minute of every day on my vacation does not feel like a vacation. So that is like an advantage and a disadvantage as far as I'm concerned all together about the bigger ships. Let's move on to service. I am going to just lay it out there really quickly and say that I have cruised on smaller ships and I have cruised on larger ships, and I know that a lot of people think that you get better service on the smaller ships because there are less passengers and then the crew has more time to interact with individual people, but it has been my experience that I don't notice any difference. If I'm on the Harmony of the Seas or the Legend of the Seas or the Norwegian Bliss or the Norwegian Jade, I haven't noticed a specific difference in the service that could be targeted to or related to the size of the ship. So if you ask me, not something to really worry about when deciding if you're going to book a smaller cruise ship or a larger cruise ship. Moving on. All right, the fun stuff inside the ship and the fun stuff outside the ship are things that when I'm booking a cruise are really important to me. And the inside stuff, I'm talking about like casinos, musicals, comedy clubs, bumper cars, things like that. Fun stuff outside the ship is like swimming pools, water slides, skydiving, things like that. So here we come back to the same thing we've talked about in a couple of these categories, and that is the smaller ships have smaller space, meaning they have less options to offer. The bigger ships, of course, have more space and they offer more fun things to do inside and outside the ship. And there are advantages and disadvantages to both of these things, which I'm going to talk about right now. If you take a cruise on a smaller ship with less fun stuff inside and outside, you're going to find it easier to relax. With less things to do, it's just much easier to like calm down. I don't know how else to say it. And you won't have that like fear of missing out or fear that you missed out at the end of your cruise, because you will most likely have the feeling that you have seen everything that you wanted to see while on the ship. Of course, the bigger ships have a lot more options, which is great for, you know, thrill seekers, young at heart, and families, but we come to the fear of missing out again, and that you might have the feeling that you have to run around your whole cruise and do this and this and this and this and this in order to have seen everything and like get your money's worth. You know what I mean? But if you like doing those things, and if you need to do those things to feel like you've had a great vacation, then of course you're going to need to go on one of the bigger ships that offer things like water parks and indoor pools and ice skating rinks and things like that. To sum up this category, smaller ships, that doesn't mean that there aren't fun things to do on board, inside and outside, but there are less of them, which will give you more opportunity to see everything and also have time to relax. Whereas the larger ships have way many more things to do, and some of them are really exciting and really, really cool. But if you want to do everything and see everything, it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of your energy, and you might not be relaxed at the end of your cruise vacation. Next up, destinations. But before we do that, there may or may not be a commercial coming right here. Did you see one? All right, destinations, of course, when you're booking a cruise, usually you look at where this cruise is going to be going to before you decide if it comes into, your selection. Although, Marcus and I once booked a cruise only because it started in Hamburg, and when we booked it, we really hadn't looked at where it was going. I'm serious. As far as the destinations go, there may be some slight differences when it comes to larger ships and smaller ships. Some Island destinations like Cuba and some of the Greek islands are only visited by smaller ships. That doesn't mean that larger ships don't also have the opportunity to go there, but one thing about taking an island cruise, especially in the Mediterranean on a larger ship, is that you're gonna be tendered in a lot of ports. Tendered means the ship doesn't stop at a dock where you can just get out of the ship and then walk into the city. Tendering means you literally jump out of a hole in the side of a ship onto a boat, and then the boat takes you into the port. I make that sound really dramatic, don't I? The bigger ships can't get into some of the smaller ports, so they have to stop, like anchor out in the ocean, and then like I said, you will exit the ship into a smaller boat, and I don't mean like a rowboat, I mean like a boat for like, 100 people. And then that is the boat you'll take into the port. And that has its advantages and disadvantages. It's a cool experience, especially if you've never done it before. But it takes time, and you'll be waiting in line to get onto the tender boat to get to the port, and you'll also be waiting in line to get onto the tender boat to get back to the ship. And I think it's just much more convenient to be actually docked in the port and to know that at any time if you want to, you can just walk back onto the ship. So that's not something that So I wouldn't say that that's like an advantage or a disadvantage. It's more of like a personal preference, I guess. And speaking of personal preference, to wrap this whole thing up, I really don't think that there is a way to decide or to prove that cruising on a smaller ship is better than a larger ship, or cruising on a larger ship is better than a smaller ship. It all boils down to what is it that you want, and if you're going to be able to do that on your cruise. Like I said, if you think I missed something, some really important point here, and I probably did, then please write it in the comments below, because maybe I will make a second episode of this video. And now comes the time on Sunday Sofa Time where I sometimes comment on your comments live on air. In last week's Sunday Sofa Time, I gave you my 10 tips to survive a summer job at a theme park. And I really had a lot of fun making it and reminiscing about the theme park experiences that I've had. And so these comments are relating to that video. And the first one I'm going to start with is from Adam Abdul Alim. Adam writes, "Hi Morgan, do you guys have a Denny's-like restaurant over there?" He means here in Germany. I live in Germany. And we have a similar chain. I guess the closest comparison would be Schweinske. Say that 3 times fast. Schweinske. Adam goes on to write, also, when was the last time the tree was outside? It looks kind of bare. Oh, it's an olive tree. It's supposed to look like that, and it's outside right now. One thing that I've learned in my years working is that teens don't care about summer jobs as much as older adults do. What I mean is that teens would like the opportunity to earn money, but not the responsibility or work involved in earning that money. They would rather just sit around and make money by hanging out with their friends and doing stuff online than actually going outside and working. Wouldn't anybody like that? Not all teens are like this, mind you, but a lot are nowadays. So spending 8 to 9 hours a day inside or outside for that matter will not appeal to a lot of teens. Next comment is from Marco Cagnina or Canina. Marco writes, "You are so right, Morgan. I've been working in an amusement park, I know which one, for more than 11 years now, and I can confirm every point you've mentioned. Once again, a great, useful, and entertaining video. Thanks, Morgan." Well, thank you, Marco. Thank you for your support, and thank you for all the special goodies you help me with when I visit your park. Final comment is from Joy Tuno. Joy writes, "Morgan, this is a great video." Thank you, Joy. The advice is not just tips for working at a theme park. It's full of great life advice. That was my telephone, by the way. Yes, there are negative Nellies everywhere in every work environment. Negative Nellies is a term I used in the video, so if you want to know what that means, watch the video from last week. I'm gonna share the heck out of this one. Have a wonderful week, and I hope your other project is coming along well. I'm sure you're rocking it. Thank you, Joy. I love getting comments like that. It's so nice to have like nice, positive comments, because the more popular that my videos get, the more haters and the more rude comments that I get too. So thanks for all of those. I'm Morgan from the Very Unofficial Travel Guide. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Patreon, and YouTube. Stick around here for a new vlog from London, first of all, coming up next Friday. I've got 2 or 3 London videos coming, and then I'm gonna start with the MSC Meraviglia videos. Yeah! See you soon!